All right, hello, welcome back. Go Big Orange Friday on, you guessed it, a Friday here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm joined, as always, my good friends over there in West Knox, Ryan Schumpert of Rocky Top Insider. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited to get on here and talk a little ball.
We love talking ball on this show.
Love talking ball.
Love talking ball on this show. Cal Stark doesn't love talking ball right now, I'm going to go ahead and guess. But we'll get into why he might not want to talk any baseball this week. Also here, Saturday Down South, Ethan Stone. Ethan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was off today from SDS, so just kind of cleaning up around the house, doing a lot of boring stuff. It was a hot one in Greenville today. Very hot. I couldn't go outside. Couldn't do anything. So I'm excited to talk some ball as well. I've just been sitting around the house.
What was that story? Ryan, did you hear this? What was that?
What story?
It's too hot to go out.
It was too hot to go out. I had an off day, so I cleaned up around the house and I did some chores.
What I've done all day. I've just sat here like a lump. I can't go outside.
I wanted to go to Home Depot, but I didn't have time. Is that what's coming out next, Ethan? What's going on?
700% humidity in Simpsonville, South Carolina. I can't go outside.
That's not helping. That you know it off the top of your head. Here's what you say when it's too humid.
So
and you're like, it's hot. Like, it's humid. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
I had a good day. I enjoyed it. I had a good day.
He's enjoying the air conditioning.
There we go.
Ethan is so built for marriage and elderly life. Like, I'm there, but, like, I'm 32. Ethan's like, what? What are you, Ethan? 23? 24?
23. It's my Devin Hester year. Yeah.
Oh, my God. That was like, that just set me back, Ryan. Like, I didn't know who I was listening to, Larry David or Ethan Stone. That was a lot. Goodness gracious. Ethan, go break a law. Like, just go do something this weekend. I don't know what. Like, speed.
Get kicked out of Applebee's.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
There we go. I can enjoy the Applebee's that's like 0.5 miles away from my house.
Can you imagine how hard it's got to be to get kicked out of an Applebee's? Like, you really got to do a lot of damage because they see all kinds of stuff. And I don't see a lot of stories of man kicked out of Applebee's. You got to really go over the top to get kicked out of an Applebee's.
Just Ricky Bobby's dad.
Just Ricky Bobby's dad.
Whatever his name is.
That is true. Reminds me of Righteous Gemstones now, and what a delightful show. Funniest TV show on TV right now. Uncle Baby Billy. Uncle Baby Billy, what is his new program? Uncle Baby Billy Bible Bonkers. And it's a spinoff of Family Feud. It's fantastic. Do y'all watch Righteous Gemstones or no? Oh, Righteous Gemstones.
That's the first time I've heard of it. When you just
on
said
Max.
it, and I was kind of zoning out by the time you were done with the sentence.
Wow. What?
That was uncalled for. I'm sorry. This is what happens when we record it. We record after 9 o'clock.
Oh my God, Ethan, what was that? Like, that was ice. Ice.
Yeah, again, that was uncalled for.
Oh my God. Let's go to Ethan. Let's go to Ethan first.
At 9 o'clock. That's it.
I wish I was Tony Reale right now. I'd give him negative 17 points here for this opening from Ryan. Just like muted. It's negative 17. Just making sure he has no chance of winning tonight's show. Just
That's a great idea. We should do a Chase Thomas Around the Horn podcast. I guess that wouldn't really work on the podcast form, but on the video, I mean, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's just more work. I gotta get a buzzer. I gotta get a dinger. I gotta do more graphics. Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day. You'd be great in the Tony Reale role, though.
I can do it.
Yeah,
I can do it. Well, Ryan, as he tries to get back in it, you'd be great in Tony Reale. I see what you're doing. Where you're like, let me see if I can get back into the good races.
Like, with that, I wasn't.
No. He was like, who can I compare him to? You'd be awesome in that. Like, you'd be that's your dude. You'd be killer. Like, you would kill that. Like, that's so you, bro.
I mean, you could replace Tony Kornheiser, and that show wouldn't drop off a lick.
I don't know about that. I feel like
I was just going through the full.
I think I'm more Wilbon than Kornheiser.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I don't think you do the patented Wilbon name drop at the same level. I mean, he can do that at a level that no one in this world can.
That's true. I don't know. I don't know who the closest comp or what position it is, but I feel the most comfortable just walking in and doing right now. I don't know. It's a good question. I think Kornheiser or Reality's probably the one. I think you're actually not wrong. I think I could easily step in and lead a debate show on ESPN. I could step right in and just be like, I could host a guest host spot and be able to keep it together. I think I could do it.
So.
Well, that naturally leads us to Vols basketball because Ryan's at -17, and we're starting with Vols basketball because it's Ryan's fault. And Vols basketball is Ethan's bread and butter here. Ethan, I saw this week that Freddie Dilione was mocked in the first round this preseason for the 2024 NBA draft. How does that work with Freddie Dilione? Do you think he has that kind of upside? Do you think he has a better season than what Julian Phillips just had at going number 35 and what we've seen from the last couple lottery high upside guys who've come through the Tennessee program? Does he feel like he could have that kind of impact? Are the minutes going to be there for Dilione? Like, how excited are you about Dilione, and why do you think a lot of folks are high on what he can do? Because it seems like they're betting on a big offensive year from him.
Yeah, do I think he's immediately going to contribute? I have no idea. The reason I think he's getting so many first round projections, I think it was number 24 to the Celtics, is just the ability to sit an entire season just on the sidelines and just learn and just figure out, still be in college basketball, but not be asked to go out there and actually compete. Just learn the speed of the game, learn how to transition from high school to college to getting to a point to use your athleticism that he very obviously has. I mean, Rick Barnes and company have been very high on that since the beginning, really, since he showed up. They said, I want to think there was a quote he said last year that he could play right now if he wanted to, but it's just, they're not going to do it because I guess he likes that process of being someone that can just look over everything and just kind of sit there, learn, and just soak it all in. And so I'm going to have a weird comp here. It's 9:00 at night, so I'm allowed to do this. I'm going to do anything I can to talk about the Utah Jazz on this show. In the Rookie of the Year race, Donovan Mitchell, Ben Simmons. Reason Ben Simmons won, I will die on this hill, is because he got to sit a year, learn how the NBA works, learn how the speed of the game, how it transitions, how all of that works. And people are saying, oh, Ben Simmons shouldn't have won it. He shouldn't have won it. I agree 100%. I'm one of those people. Being in that system and not having to blindly transition like that, like what Dilione is going to be doing into college basketball, is just such an advantage. It's such an advantage. Do I think he's immediately going to show up and be Kennedy Chandler? Is he even really going to be a Julian Phillips? I have no idea. But that ability to transition, I think, is just so helpful. And with the obvious talent that he has, sure, he can be a first rounder. And I think that's why people are projecting him like that, because he's going to play defense. That under Barnes. He's probably going to come in and automatically contribute. I mean, Julian Phillips, let's be honest. That's exactly what he was last year. He didn't do a huge amount offensively. He's an incredible athlete, and he's incredible defensively. That's why he goes to the Bulls. And I can see Dilione. He's probably going to have a little more success than Phillips, if I'm totally honest, just because he's a pure talent like that. I'm not going to act like I'm just know that he's automatically going to come out and be like a starter or anything like that. But I do think he has a huge advantage over a lot of other players, like kind of what I've just talked about, to be able to go that high. I think it's very possible.
I think so too. I think what's interesting, because if you go back and remember, like Kennedy Chandler, it was a big surprise that he ended up falling where he did. And we'll see what happens over the next couple of years for his NBA career. But like, he's 6'1". Freddie Dilione's sneaky 6'4", like kind of long. You look at it and like, I just feel like he's someone Barnes is going to really love and really emphasize. And I just think the fit with him and Zakai will actually be pretty clean. Like, I think those two will. I'm just curious how he meshes with Santi. Like, the stock was a lot higher for him individually if Santi's not back, because I think he would have had an expansive role, and I think a lot would have been on his plate offensively. Now I'm wondering what that looks like, because Santi's on the ball so much, and maybe he does take a step back a little bit in this final year and he doesn't have to do as much, but like, when Zeigler's back, like Zeigler's gonna be on the ball a bunch. Josiah brings the ball up sometimes. Like, I wonder what the touches situation is gonna look like, Ryan, with Freddie, and how he fits in with a lot of guys who need the ball to be effective in this offense.
That's the question. I think, the stuff getting there early, I think that's big, because he gets to watch Rick Barnes scream at everybody that's not him for a half a season, and he gets to be all right. This is because I made a joke all the time last year. It's like, I hope Freddie's enjoying him not being on scout team where he's not debuted us, because first practice they get going in the fall, he's going to be the guy, and it's a little bit less pressure on him because of that very point you just said. Tennessee brought so many guys back. And then the other part is, he's going to know the defense. I mean, to me, defense is the weak spot for him. I think you'll see better production from him than Julian Phillips on the offensive end, because I think he's a much more talented scorer. But to me, this Tennessee team as a whole is just going to be fascinating because there's so many pieces. But he might be, to me, the most fascinating piece of how he fits. I think you're right. His value, his chances of going a first round, I think were way higher when you started the offseason, and it was like, all right, he's going to be one of the most leaned on scorers if he can stay on the court for 25 minutes a game, or at least 20 minutes a game. Now it's not necessarily really the case. He's going to have to probably carve out his offensive role a little bit more, but he is, I think, a really, really talented offensive player, a different skill set from the guard spot that Tennessee really hasn't had the last couple of years. And I don't even think he'll handle the ball some, but I don't think he's going to play a lot of point guard necessarily. I still think Jemai Meshack and Vescovy will be playing point guard more than him. But in the half court with the ball in his hands, I think the way he can score is going to be really unique. And look, you're going to find few people that are bigger Santiago Vescovy fans than me. I love watching him play. I think he's been incredible for Tennessee the last 2 years.
Second best shooter on the team.
Let's get this on the record for people who didn't hear. That's not my take. That's Chase's awful take. Moving on, pivoting. But we had this conversation a few weeks ago when we talked about Tennessee if they're a top 5 team. It's Tennessee's got to get better offensively. They got to get better scorers. Santiago Vescovy cannot be your number one scorer. And Freddie Dilione has the talent. Would I predict this to be the case? Probably not. But he has the talent and the offensive ability to, all right, we look around, and he's the type of guy that can exceed what Santi gives him offensively if everything just clicks for him and it goes gangbusters. Or at least is a guy that can, from a number standpoint, be compatible to what Vescovy gives you, but the skill set is going to be different, and it makes Tennessee a lot more dangerous on that end.
And I'm really curious to see what it looks like with him when they're in, when he shares the floor with, because I think Santi will be fine, like you said. I'm less worried about him off the ball, and I think he'll get better shots. He'll shoot the ball really well in this final year, and I think he'll be fine. What does Zakai do off ball? What does Zakai do when he has to stand away from the action, when it's Freddie Dilione doing pick and pops with Josiah or whoever? We haven't really seen that from Zakai. Zakai is going to drive into traffic and he'll dribble around wherever trying to find an open Santi, Josiah, whoever. Will he still be someone you want on the floor in the final 2 minutes of a close game if Freddie is what we think he can be, because of the upside, because of the just what he can do offensively? I think he just does more of what they need late in games. And Zakai's going to have to evolve. Zakai's going to have to do more cutting. He's going to have to do more stuff off ball, and we'll see what he does. But I'm very curious to see how Zakai fares if he's not the initiator in close games.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this isn't to say he's not going to have to evolve, because it wasn't like he was flawless then. But, I mean, his freshman year, he did that all the time. I mean, He's playing with Kennedy Chandler and Santiago Vescovy, and he's handling the ball, and he's got to get better at evolving off the ball. And I don't really see a scenario where Tennessee's not going to want Zakai Zeigler on the court at the end of the games. I just think, and obviously Freddie or some of these guys, they can mitigate that. But you look back last year, what did Tennessee miss when Zakai Zeigler went down? It was the last 5 minutes of games. And, you're hoping that you have Dilione or Jemai Meshack evolves, and you've got some guys, maybe one of the transfers who, all right, you have another guy that can put the ball on the floor and get you a basket in an isolation spot. But I think Zakai's ability to do that while also being a good free throw shooter, probably the best free throw shooter on the team, at least one of them, of the high volume free throw shooters, probably the best on the team, and being a defensive hound. I just have a hard time thinking Tennessee's going to want that off the court. But to your point, there's, if Dilione becomes what he can become and reaches, his ceiling in his redshirt freshman year, Zeigler will have to evolve.
I think so. Speaking of they need to evolve, Tennessee offensive lineman recruiting. No. When you look at the recruiting week ahead, so we got Satterwhite tomorrow. You're hearing this today. He will be announcing 4-star interior offensive lineman. He'll be making his college decision. It looks like it's down to Clemson and Tennessee, just like it was for Ronan O'Connell, 3-star inside offensive lineman in state. He ends up at Clemson. they've got a pretty good mix. Like Max Anderson and company, like I'm not really worried. They have a lot of bodies. In the last class, they had a lot of inside guys. Like they're pretty. I shouldn't say loaded because it's not like it's a bunch of like 4 or 5 star inside guys, but like they're okay. Like I'm not as concerned about the guards and the centers and like losing a Ronan O'Connell or whoever. I do think it matters a whole lot more about getting Satterwhite in the fold. You missed there and both end up at Clemson. So you're going to have to do a lot of pivoting a little bit because you're going to have to, because you need to have that done. Like if you have that out, you're like, all right, we can only focus on tackle. But if you miss out on Satterwhite, you look up and down the list, you're like, all right, well now you still got to get another pretty good guard and you still have to clear the tackle barrier with what's his name? I'm blanking on his name now. Bennett Warren, yeah, from Texas. And that's a big pull. Ryan, when you look at how this week is shaping up on the offensive line recruiting front, is it a big miss for Ronan O'Connell to leave the state of Tennessee? And do you see Satterwhite as a must-get for Tennessee?
O'Connell's a big miss in the fact that it was a kid from Nashville that you targeted for a long time. Like, he's a big miss because of that. I don't think it's a big miss in what you lose from a value standpoint. And I think if William Satterwhite commits to Tennessee today, I guess for those listening, it's kind of like, all right, well, who cares? You ended up getting a guy at least, I don't know who's better. I'm not an offensive line expert, but a guy that's ranked higher and a guy that plays the same spot, and you've been recruiting both of them, and you're kind of at a good spot interior-wise. I still hold short of saying it's a must-get. I mean, I think your logic's good there. You don't want to be having to be pivoting this late, and especially if offensive tackle, you don't get Bennett Warren. I mean, even if you do get Bennett Warren, either way, you're going to need to be able to put more emphasis there. It's just what I've gone back to. I feel confident. Glenn Ellerby, for all his, to this point, recruiting pitfalls, has been a really good position coach and a really good coaching them up. And I think interior offensive line's a spot you can do that. I mean, I've talked about it on here. Getting big-time tackles, I think, matters. You know, I have a lot of confidence Tennessee's going to be able to get a lot out of the interior offensive line. Javonte Spraggins, best interior offensive lineman, was ranked in the 700s, 800s. Jerome Carvin, I guess, was a low 4-star, but they've had plenty of guys, the production there, that weren't big recruits. So it's not a must-get, in my opinion, but it softens the blow of the week. You know, Ronan O'Connell's out of sight, out of mind if you get Satterwhite tomorrow.
Yeah. Now,
if you don't get both of them, and it's just a compounded issue, it's like, man, this is a problem. The offensive line recruiting, and if you don't get Bennett Warren, it's like, man, it feels like that expedites the Glenn Ellerby, some level of hot seat talk or conversation.
I don't think it's a hot take. If he misses out on Satterwhite and Warren, I think you have to have the sit down conversation of like, this is not going to work long term. Like this, it's just not enough. Like you saw in the Georgia game, Ethan, like Jalen Carter, even getting double teamed, just ruined Spraggins' life. Like he was just abusing Sprags on the right side. And look, it's a developmental position. It's something that Glenn Ellerby, he got a lot more out of Darnell Wright than the previous staff did. The previous staff recruited him. Glenn Ellerby developed him. I wish there was a way to that's why I think your idea is great, Ryan. Tony Vitello recruits the offensive lineman, and then Glenn Ellerby develops the offensive lineman. But clearly there is a disconnect on that front. And I don't know why, because I think part of it that scares me a little bit is Darnell Wright just went number 10. And you can show that. And Darnell, I think, was on campus recently and is talking to the Marcus Easleys, the Daniel Calhouns. Like, he's there, and you have that right now to point. Like, this dude just got better under me, and he was a number 10 pick. Like, he was not anywhere near that 2 years ago. And for his development, it was all under Glenn Ellerby. It's kind of like one of those questions where you're like, man, if you don't have momentum after this kind of run, I mean, I don't know. That's a big deal to get him in that top 10 spot and to really be struggling where it's like Gage Ginther and Jesse Perry are your linchpin tackles in this class right now. I understand there aren't a bunch of tackles in the Trey Smiths in the state of Tennessee don't come along very often, but I think it's fair to be like, look, if you want to compete with the big dogs, when you have this competitive of an NIL space, when you are succeeding just about everywhere else, the final piece, unfortunately, to go from good to great is like the trenches. Like, you have to address this. And this is why these battles, and we'll talk about another edge guy who committed somewhere else today, but that's the final piece to this Heupel machine, and whether or not it can get over that final hump is what they do recruiting in the trenches. And it's a great thing to develop them, but I don't know about you, Ethan, but I have to see Glenn Ellerby land a Darnell type. You have to land a Bennett Warren. You have to land one of these guys, and you have to do it over the next couple of years because those Georgia defensive linemen aren't getting any easier. Williams-Ranieri will probably be on that defensive line, it looks like now, in the next couple of years. Samuel Mpemba, they're not going anywhere. Bama's defensive line isn't going anywhere. It's LSU, another one. When SEC changes, like Texas, whoever, like that has to change. And I understand the scheme will help things, the tempo will help things, but I'm very concerned that this is going to be a running problem year over year. What do you think?
I think I'm less concerned than you are specifically because of the tempo. I mean, it's obviously a nice thing to be getting these guys. I do think also when you bring up Darnell Wright, I think a lot of people really, I'm kind of forgetting the word here because it's late at night and I've been up for a long time, but I guess I'm just not even going to remember the word, to be 100% honest. Did not appreciate Darnell Wright as much as they should have, and appreciate a good offensive lineman as much as you should have. I've seen a couple things about Satterwhite about how he's a very interesting prospect because his frame is more specifically built, I feel like, for guard, but he played almost, and I guess this is something that is kind of usual for the high school ranks, he played almost exclusively tackle. At his school that I think won the championship game. And so you start thinking about, I mean, it's kind of plays to Ryan's point also that I don't feel like there's many elite, like Darnell Wright level offensive tackles out there. It's just like that's just how kind of recruiting works. So getting more of these guys, I feel like is a big thing, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's like, you know, if Tennessee misses on Satterwhite, it's the end of the world type of thing. I think I'd lean more towards Ryan's thought process on that, specifically because, I mean, you don't have – sure, you're going to have Alabama and Georgia's defensive lines that are always going to be there and always going to be terrifying, and football is one of the trenches and all that, but Tennessee gets the ball out for the most part. They're getting the ball out soon anyway. I mean, after your first action, and I'm not going to claim to be an offensive line expert either, after your first action, either the ball's out or you're running anyway, as far as an interior offensive line is concerned. The ball's very likely going to be out of there. I think it's more important to go offensive tackle, and forgive me if that was your question, if you're saying is offensive tackle more important. I don't necessarily think that missing on Saturday – for the record, I think Tennessee probably will get Satterwhite. I've seen a lot of things that it's kind of a coin flip at the moment, but I don't think missing an offensive guard or a prospect for an offensive guard is necessarily the end of the world. No.
I'd love to get the behind the scenes. I mean, this will take a couple of years, Ryan, of like what it actually is that's holding them back to this point in the recruiting, like off the record, like what it is, as to why it's not happening to this point in time. But I'm, like you said, like Bennett Warren could commit, Satterwhite could commit, and we're looking okay. Still not where you want to be depth-wise, especially after you look at next year and all the dudes who will be gone and what this offensive line might look like. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're having to live in the portal to replace your tackles year over year. Like that's just not a place you want to be in as a top 10 program. And if you are going to be in that blue chip ratio and really commit to where you're going, like that it just has to be better. Like it's just part of it. Like it has to be elite at that tackle spot. And right now, I don't think they're recruiting at elite level at the tackle spot. On the flip side, though, where I'm way more trusting and believing is Rodney Gardner. So even though Elijah Rushing, and we'll see what happens over the long haul with his recruitment, he stays home, biggest recruit in Arizona history. The University of Arizona gets their biggest. His brother is now on scholarship at U of A. But there was some buzz. Like it kind of came out of nowhere that Elijah Rushing, the 5-star edge, with Eckler and Gardner were pushing pretty hard, and it might have come down to just those two. And we'll see what happens if Arizona has a bad year, if Jed Fish gets a different job. Like there's a lot of variables in play that maybe he doesn't make it to Tucson because, again, it's going to be hard to keep him big-time player, all that. And we'll see what kind of season Arizona has. But, like, I don't know. I'm not as panicky about missing out on Elijah Rushing because I think Devin Hobbs you got late in the cycle. You got Joshua Josephs late, James Pierce late. Like Gardner closes really well, and that's one of the things that I am not as concerned. Are you in the same boat, Ryan, when it comes to the defensive line recruiting?
Completely, 100%. And, you know, Tennessee, I think part of that's Tennessee is still involved with a lot more big-name guys. And, you know, frankly, at this point, as we sit here in early July, it doesn't seem like it's necessarily trending in the right direction with a lot of those guys. But they're not over. And I have a lot of trust in Rodney Gardner. I mean, I've said it on here before. He's been he's been landing big time recruits and winning big time recruiting battles in the Southeast since 10 years before I was born. So I'm not going to start doubting him at this point. And it's because, it's what he's done at Tennessee. I mean, I'm talking about 30 years. Ronnie Gardner's recruited really well in the defensive line in his first 2 cycles at Tennessee. And not that Tennessee's been awful recruiting on the offensive line, but it's not been the same caliber by any means. So, yeah, for a number of reasons, I don't view those two things the same at all. And with rushing, I mean, that almost seemed like it did seem like one that was rare, and I always tip my cap to these kids when it doesn't feel like anybody really knows for sure what they're doing. I know there was buzz around Arizona, but you didn't see the flood of crystal balls or on-3 predictions come in for him. But I still have to say, I didn't even ever think Tennessee was that serious of a player. It did seem like maybe they made a run late, but yeah, it's a loss. But I don't even view that one as a tough loss because it's not necessarily one I ever thought the Vols were going to get. And there's a lot of other, big-time guys that Tennessee's in the thick of it for.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, Braylon Staley now in the boat, and a lot of Tennessee fans love that they end up getting a better player out of South Carolina after Mizia Bennett decommits from Tennessee after committing forever ago. It's actually been a really weird wide receiver recruiting cycle.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
J.J. Harrell now, he goes, it's just really weird that if it was any other program, you're like, all right, what's going on? We can't, this is a little weird. But now I just feel like it's going to be Staley, Terrell Anderson, the North Carolina kid. That'll probably be a late ad, another 4-star. This could just be 4 4-star and 5-star guys. You could end up with Matthews, Jefferson, Staley, and Anderson. And that's just I'm probably most excited because you already have Nathan Leacock, who I think is going to be a really good player. And that was a really good early eval for Tennessee. And he's a strong 4-star. But I just feel like that's going to be the highlight of this class. That's my gut. Do you feel the same, Ethan? Is that after it's all said and done, the bread and butter of the 2024 class is going to be, I would like to go catch passes from Nico Iamaleava or Jake Merklinger over the next couple of years. That would be my jam. What do you think?
I'd say you just summed it up pretty perfectly with your last. I mean, Tennessee's offense, it's a wide receiver's dream. Jalen Hyatt proved it last year, and I'm not going to compare anybody to Jalen Hyatt, but that's probably the type of player that Staley's going to. I mean, he's probably going to be a lot in the slot. He's incredibly fast. He won a couple 200-meter stuff in the state of South Carolina. I think it was 4A or 5A. I can't remember, but he's wicked fast. Yeah. He's probably going to thrive. I don't know about thrive, but he'll do well in the slot. And he's the type of player that I feel like Kelsey Pope, that Tennessee is just a fan of. Just uber fast dudes that have a good catch radius and just have a solid knack for running very quickly and catching the ball. That's a solid thing. And so you add that on top of, I feel like Matthews has been trending to Tennessee for a while, but you just never know. I mean, things change, certainly, but I don't think Staley is going to be the last one, if that was kind of your sub question there. I think Tennessee's probably going to add a lot more. I know Jefferson, he's down in Chattanooga, right?
Yeah, he's a Baylor.
Yeah. And so, you're thinking that guy, just from the projections of it, Tennessee's wide receiver room does not seem to be done in the class of 2024. I really like where they're heading with that. I'd agree with you 100%. That's very exciting. I just, the fact that you're getting that, and then you also get Merklinger, who is, I think, Tennessee's highest rated commit in the class of 2024 as of right now, getting that and getting that set up for these receivers to say, hey, Tennessee's offense, their wide receiver offense, just in general, you're seeing Brew McCoy, you're seeing Cedric Tillman, you're seeing Jalen Hyatt just streak down the field and make defenders look like they're high schoolers because of the type of routes that Tennessee is running. That's going to be good for anybody. And so they see that Merklinger's at the top and they say, okay, I want to go join in on the fun. And
there's just no path for it to not work out. It's it's even if it's not Nico, if it's Jake, whoever, we're not really concerned. It's also, they have the most amount of receivers drafted in the NFL over the last, 4 years? Is it? That's the stat. Is it 4 or 3? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I haven't even seen this stat.
Tennessee's the most amount
I didn't know that either. That surprised me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because I think Tennessee, after this draft, had the most amount of receivers taken, and I think it's the last 3 years. I mean, with Vila, Cedric, Jalen.
I really would have assumed Ohio State. That's impressive.
Well, yeah, Ohio State's kind of a good run this year. But, yeah, I mean, that's the other part of it. Vila's completely different kind of player, and he worked out in a really unique way. Jalen Hyatt, just a streaker downfield. He worked out in a different way. Javonte Payton even had success first play of the game, and he was going to find it. Like, I just think Tennessee is building and capitalized in a major way, and Kelsey Pope has been an elite recruiter and just an elite position coach moving when Cody Burns left and he took over. He's just hit the ground running, and maybe the ace recruiter of this staff, like him and Joey Halsey, because like I'm not worried about it. I think they're going to end up with 4 4-stars or 3 4-stars and 1 5-star with Mike Matthews. I just think they're in a really good spot, and I think it's an easy sell. Like look at this group, and that's the one where it's like, it's fun, guys have fun, and you're going to get drafted. Like it's an easy one.
Well, I think the thing that stands.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I think the thing that stands out to me, and kind of when you look at the future and what an easy sell it is what we were just talking about. Tennessee's had 2 like 150 to 200 rated recruits decommit, and then boom, Braylon Staley. I mean, they've been involved. They've been recruiting them for a while, but it's not like Braylon Staley has been a top 3 receiver target you think about when it's Tennessee. And it's just like, and I know Clemson took some guys, and I don't know if he had a spot there, but it's like, boom, Tennessee puts hard pressure on. They lose J.J. Harrell, hard pressure. They get a guy ranked higher than them 2 weeks later. And it just feels like Tennessee, the top 100 guys, those elite receivers, you're always going to have to battle with. And Amari Jefferson's top 3. I don't get why he's ranked as low as he is. But it just feels like Tennessee will be able to just get consistently 150 to 300 ranked player in the country, 4-star receiver. Like, they can pick those up whenever they want. And if the offense continues at the pace that I think we all think it will, I don't see that changing.
Like, Cedric Tillman played, like, he's a 3-star. Like, just forgot. Like, he was blocking 2
closer to
ago.
a 2-star almost. I mean, he was a 77th receiver in the country, I think.
And he turned into Randy Moss in this offense for a little bit. Like, he had, like, it was pretty great. I'm not really worried about that at all. Vols, 4th best SEC title odds per Bet Online right now, Ethan. Does that feel right to you? Do you buy 4th best odds going into the year?
Based on the schedule, yes. I did some thinking about this especially. I mean, like, Georgia's going to be Georgia, and their schedule is incredibly easy. So it's impossible, in my opinion, for Georgia to lose more than 1 SEC game, and I don't even think they're going to lose 1. Alabama, I'm not 100% sure on. LSU is in a similar boat to Georgia, to be totally honest. Their schedule just works out to where I can't see them losing more than 2 SEC games. I mean, they're one of their biggest tests of the season is really going to be Florida State, and that's I don't have it off the top of my head. I think LSU has, I don't know. I was looking at it a bit ago, but I cannot see LSU losing more than 2 games, 2 SEC games anyway. And I just feel like that's kind of, do I think Tennessee is a better football team than LSU? I'm not really sure. Do I think they're a better football team? Honestly, this is going to sound crazy, than even Alabama. I'm not sure about that either, because Alabama, I mean, everyone's just assuming that Nick Saban is just going to figure it out and they're going to come back and they're going to, only lose 1 game and that's going to be that. But, I mean, they're going to have Tyler Buckner or Jalen Milroe at quarterback. That's not great. Yeah, I mean, I get, Ty Simpson could come in and be the next Bryce Young, sure, but that's not great by any mean of the standard. And not to mention, I think they're returning, 5 starters on 10 starters overall, maybe 5 on defense, 5 on offense. And so Alabama's going to be good. Sure, they're going to be number probably 2 in the SEC, but their schedule is again much tougher. I mean, they got, I believe, Texas A&M, at Auburn, at Kentucky. They should beat those easily, but all of those are on the road, plus games against Tennessee. I mean, they have more of a, I guess what I'm going on about here is they have more of a opportunity to fail than LSU. Do I think they will? Probably not. They're probably going to just lose 1 or 2 games, and that'll be that. But it's really going to come down to Tennessee and Alabama in October. That's really going to be the fight, I think, for 3rd place, because I think Georgia and LSU just don't lose enough games to not be right there. And if Tennessee beats Alabama, they'll probably be 3rd. If Alabama beats Tennessee, I think Tennessee's going to be 4th. I think that'll be how that works out.
I think they win one of Bama, Florida, Georgia. Like, I think Tennessee, I think they go 1 of 3. I don't know which one it is.
One of those is not like the other.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I understand that.
And don't get me, look, no one, you don't have to talk curses and Tennessee's inability. I mean, I've long said the Brentwood Blaze triple B team could trot out there in those Florida Gator uniforms. I'm not sure Tennessee could beat them. So I get it, but it's like you just named team that's going to go 12-0, team that's probably going to go our best college football program in the last 15 years, and then a team who's over or under win totals 5.5.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, you know what's crazy? I feel better about Tennessee's chances in Alabama than I do at Florida this year.
You're right. That's such a good point, Chase. That is crazy. That is genuine crazy talk.
But do you not feel that way? Will you not go into the Florida game more?
I'll go into the Florida game with such Tennessee will find a way to lose this game feeling.
Yeah.
But I won't feel more confident Tennessee going in to Bryant-Denny Stadium a year after they beat Alabama than I will go.
I will. That's me. I am. I'm going in. I actually think that there's a better chance Tennessee beats Bama than Florida this year.
I think that's insanity.
This is all
I
to make
think,
it.
I mean, look, I think Tennessee has a better chance against Alabama than people are thinking. That is how I would phrase that. I do not think they have a better chance of beating Alabama than Florida. Florida's not good.
This has to be it.
This is why I'm telling you. This is why it's gonna hurt so much when Florida wins 17-13.
I'll say this much: if Tennessee loses 17-13, they ain't got no prayer. The season will be in shambles by the time they roll into Tuscaloosa. Shambles. They won't be winning in Tuscaloosa. If they lose in Gainesville, buddy. I mean, this thing is going to crater quickly if Tennessee loses that way in Florida, and if they lose to Florida, it's that way with Joe Milton just imploding.
Well, the offense too just kind of lends itself to just beat people it shouldn't beat every year. Like, this offense is just going to be an offense that beats some people and if Tennessee's down, I think it actually lends itself to beating Georgia more likely than if they don't. Like, if they have 3 losses, Georgia's not getting up. Like, Georgia, that was their Super Bowl in the regular season last year. Like, they loved every second of destroying a number 1 Tennessee team coming into town thinking that they were the best team and Tennessee is back and all this. And if Tennessee has 3 losses and they lose to Bama, Florida, and A&M at home, and the offense is still somewhere in the top 10 in the country, and Georgia doesn't really get up for it the same way they would usually, I think that actually lends itself to Tennessee having a better chance at home versus if Tennessee is 1 loss or even undefeated going into that point again. I just think Georgia gets up for stuff like that where they're like, yeah, we're going to walk into Neyland and absolutely crush you in a different kind of way. I think it's going to be harder for them to get up. I mean, they were sleepwalking through the first quarter at Neyland 2 years ago. Like, Tennessee was up. Like, they were not expecting to be hit in the mouth in that kind of way. And Tennessee had, 4 or 5 losses at that point when they played Georgia? So, 4, yeah. I don't know. I actually think there's a better chance of Tennessee beating Georgia if they have a worse season.
It's crazy to me that you can have a take that's so horrible like the Florida Alabama one and then followed up with one. I think that's a phenomenal take. Like, Georgia is
just when I thought you couldn't be any dumber. You go out and do something like this and totally redeem yourself. It's my MO, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like at this point Georgia's just still, even if Tennessee has a good season, the talent level they're just cut above. And when they're up, I mean, no one hates it more than I do. I mean, it's the worst. Some of my best friends are Georgia people. I can't stand it, but I mean, it's the best program in college football right now, and there's just a dominance that when they're on their game. And granted, the fair thing is if you're going to beat them, it's going to have to be with some just stud receivers they can't guard. They still wouldn't have beaten Alabama 2 years ago if they didn't injure their 2 best players in the SEC championship and national championship. Sorry, it's true. Might not win last year if they don't have a bounty on Marvin Harrison. Sorry. Got to get the Georgia hate out there. I said too much nice stuff about him. Wow. But I think you're right. They're just a cut above when they're in their A game. They're dialed in, and if I'm not, they'll be probably sleepwalking. But if Tennessee's got 3 losses, and we're so far they've been removed from the SEC East hunt for a month and a half, I think your chances of catching them is a lot more likely.
There you go. I like it. Ethan, last Vol football question, and we'll wrap up with Vol baseball. Bigger Vol football threat this year, South Carolina or Kentucky in the East? Who do you think is actually going to end up having a better season and be a better threat to Tennessee?
I don't even really think it's close. I think it's Kentucky because Kentucky's coming off of a bye. They have probably the most improved offensive line in the SEC. Devin Leary, I get he's coming off an injury. Devin Leary, I think, is being severely underrated by just people that follow SEC football in general. Ray Davis is solid as well, and he's coming back against, like I said, behind an offensive line that should be really good. And do I think either of them really are even going to beat Tennessee? No, I don't. I think both are probably going to finish around 7-5, maybe 8 wins. I don't necessarily think either of them will have the chance. I think of the two, though, Kentucky has the better chance because it's in Kentucky, and I know Kentucky's not exactly a terrifying place to play, but they're coming off a bye as well. And Kentucky, they hate Tennessee, man. They're sick of losing to Tennessee. I wouldn't quite compare it to Tennessee, Florida, but like Kentucky is sick of losing to Tennessee. That's the game that certain Wildcat fans are going to circle. I don't necessarily think the rivalry between Tennessee and South Carolina is quite to that level to add that extra layer, but yeah, I don't really think it's close, to be honest. I think South Carolina is actually going to be a fairly easy game. They lose a lot of people. I don't see them coming into Neyland and beating Tennessee twice in a row. I don't see it happening. I do see Kentucky potentially giving them a fight just based off, and it's late in the season too, so it's really going to depend on, I guess, what's happening. You could sway my mind if we get 3 weeks ahead of it and things are going differently. But right this instant, I don't think it's close. I think Kentucky's the tougher battle.
That's interesting. I lean South Carolina being tougher. I think something has to give in this rivalry. Where blowout 2 years ago in Neyland, blowout at South Carolina last year. I think the talent pool is pretty close. I think they upgraded at offensive coordinator based on me talking to the South Carolina folks and how simplifying the playbook there. There was something different with what they're doing. I could see. I see more of a path to them playing Tennessee close in Neyland next year than I do Kentucky being able to keep up with Heupel and company. I don't think that that's a good matchup at all for Stoops. And I still would say.
I don't think it's a great matchup either. I agree with you. I don't think either of them are really going to get close, but.
I think South Carolina is going to be close. I've been thinking about it a lot this summer. I think South Carolina Tennessee is actually a good game. I think it's probably a game in the fourth quarter. I think Tennessee wins. I could see it being closer to what Ole Miss Tennessee at home was 2 years ago, is what my gut tells me. I think it's going to be closer to that. But we'll see. It's a day game, and we'll be up. It'll be hot, and maybe that will be a difference maker because I don't want to ever play South Carolina at night. I hate it. That being said, Ryan, which way do you lean as more likely to finish second, or also just give Tennessee more problems this year?
Yeah, well, I think they very well could be competitive games. I mean, I just don't know what to expect out of Tennessee. I mean,
yeah,
it's just what we go back to. It's the question. It's the number 7 question, and it's hard for me to sit here and be like, those games won't be close when number 7 could easily not be good enough for both those games to be very close and even toss-ups. I lean to Kentucky being the harder game. I don't have a ton of separation in it. I just think those are, to me, pretty similar teams. Again, I feel like Spencer Rattler, I feel exactly like I felt about him last offseason, where I just don't know. He could be good, he could be bad, and then he proceeded to be bad for 10 weeks and then be really good for 3 weeks. So maybe he has turned the corner. I don't know. I still think Devin Leary is probably the safer bet there. And then you just look at Tennessee's got the revenge factor. Not that that's the huge deal, but revenge factor at home compared to Kentucky again being on the road. I lean towards Kentucky being a little bit harder, but I view those probably being the most compatible games on the schedule when you talk about just how even I view those games going into them.
I like it. Ryan, what happened this week? Ryan Galaney is a Vol. We got Billy Amick is a Vol. We've got just insert name here. If he entered the portal, he's probably going to be a Vol. What is happening right now with Tennessee baseball? And are they now well on their way to being the preseason number 1 going into next year?
I don't know about that. That feels still a little bit pushing it, and maybe they will be. I'm not I'm following the complete college baseball landscape super closely, but I know Florida's got a lot of dudes back, and they've gotten some good guys in the portal too on a team that was pretty good but better than Tennessee this year. So go back top 5 preseason 100%. And what you've seen is Tony Vitello and his staff have landed, I mean, at a rate that you just don't see. It's like the Chase Thomas dream recruiting rate of when I was saying a few weeks back on the pod of you just you're going to get some guys and you're not. You can't have this mindset you're going to get everybody. Tennessee's gotten, not everybody, but
Don't tell that to Tony Vitello, sir.
they've gotten pretty close to all the main people they have targeted in the portal. And, Ryan Galaney, you're not home free at all there. You're going to have to survive the draft. And from talking to him, I think his ideal version has him playing professional baseball next year. But, man, what Tennessee has lost, arguably the best returning pitcher in the country, and the team has gotten drastically better. And it's a huge testament to Tony Vitello, to Josh Elander, Frank Anderson, the whole staff, Richard Jackson, Quentin Everhart on visits. But they have been aggressive but meticulous in how they've attacked things. And, it's paid off for them really in all the best ways.
What is Billy Amick? Is he a third baseman? Because does this mean Zane Denton is gone if you're bringing in Billy Amick? Does that kind of is that reading the tea leaves correctly?
I think that's reading the tea leaves correctly. Okay. Again, this stuff's all fluid, but as of less than a week out of the draft, like 5 days out of the draft, actually, don't even know what day it is. It's Thursday. I would be surprised if Zane Denton's back at Tennessee next year. And yeah, I think if Ryan Galaney makes it to campus, I think he's probably at third base. Billy Amick's at second base.
So where's Christian Moore? Short?
I think one of the corner outfield spots. I think or in the outfield somewhere. Shortstop's the big question left, obviously, which I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But I think, and then if Galaney, doesn't make it to Tennessee, I think Amick's probably at third base.
Interesting. Is it Kendra? Would they really run it back? Or is there someone in the portal? Is there someone else? Can we just do the meme? Just like, here you go. I can even do the Dumb and Dumber thing. Like the next shortstop who enters the portal, just be like, here you go. Here you go. Like, who's the next one?
Yeah, I think that's something you'd be monitoring. You'd at least want to bring someone in for competition. I know they were interested in Jaden Davis from Samford, who ended up going to Vanderbilt. He's from Cookeville. But again, that one, from the beginning, the tea leaves were all pointing to Vanderbilt. So while Tennessee was interested, it didn't feel like it was, all right, here's plan A at shortstop next year.
He wasn't built for Tennessee. He was more of a Vanderbilt. He was like anyone. It's important that folks remember that anyone Vanderbilt's getting in the portal is someone that Tennessee passed on. Continue.
Speaking of, when we're on the Vanderbilt topic, I saw this tweet literally within 5 minutes. It was sent to me. Vandy Camp Day 2. Corb's teaching 280 kids how the Vandy boys stand for the anthem. It's really hard to imagine that's not a bit. You're talking about bits, me thinking your Florida takes a bit. That's more of a bit than that could possibly be. But moving on. Yeah, I think at this point you continue to monitor the portal. I'm sure Tennessee will be looking there, but I think there's a great deal of confidence in. You have Jaslov too. I think Kendrow's certainly the higher ceiling guy, but I think there's a great deal of confidence in what those guys bring you defensively, and what Tennessee's done, so well in the portal, and just what they have coming back. Some of the the younger guys, Dreiling, Tiers. I think you almost, again, it's probably not plan A. It's not the best case scenario, but I think you're kind of willing to bite the bullet of being good defensively at shortstop, of taking a step back offensively. Kind of like you had with Cortland Lawson. Tennessee would kill for Cortland Lawson's production.
I would kill for Cortland Lawson. Ninth whole legend. Love Cortland.
But Cortland, kind of what you thought you were getting from Cortland. Cortland ended up being a better hitter than I think, at least I expected. Maybe everybody in the program thought he'd be that good.
No, I saw it coming. I was like, that's an Alex Gonzalez clone if I've ever seen one.
I saw the 280, which I think is around what he hit, with 7 home runs, not the 14 home runs he ended up hitting.
He was sneaky huge.
He was. He hit that opposite field home run he hit at Kentucky, saved him from getting swept in 2022. People forget, but
not us.
We're kind of
not on this program.
We're kind of rambling on, but that concept, obviously they'd kill for Cortland Lawson, but that concept of being good shortstop defensively.
Well, who's the last name, the pitcher that Drew Beam is working? What's his name?
Luke Holman.
Okay. Do you think that's happening?
I think it's I think Tennessee's in it as much as anybody right now, but I think that one's not necessarily close to a decision. I think he wants to take a couple of visits, and obviously, as you mentioned, he's with Drew Beam, Team USA Baseball. I think they got another week left of games with that, so I would kind of wait. I think it's going to quiet down a little bit in the portal. Maybe they'll make me look dumb. I personally didn't see the Dalton Bargo commitment coming today, so they could have something else up their sleeve. But I think maybe a little bit more of a slow burn for a week or so, and then I think stuff will pick up with Luke Holman. And I think going into that stretch, Tennessee's in the thick of it with him. I know Drew Beam's been working him really hard the Team USA stuff.
There you go, Ethan. What do you think? How excited are you for this next evolution? $100 million in LNS, turning into just the most intense atmosphere. Like, is this enough to bring you back? How many weekend trips are you making it back to Knoxville from South Carolina, from enemy territory?
Talk about the Lindsey Nelson renovations and Tennessee getting literally everybody in the transfer. But you know how hard it is to make like me care about baseball, college baseball, after like late June. I mean, for Tennessee to be getting all these guys, to be getting,
I'm ready to run through a brick wall. Like the Vol villain next year, like I am going to be despicable because this is going to be a home run machine. Like whoever ends up, like we just know that they are going to obliterate the baseball. Blake Burke might bat ninth, and like you look at this lineup next year and what it could really be. They are going to hit more home runs than 2 years ago, I think, in the regular season.
Honestly, one of the first things I thought when I saw that they got Amick is what's happening with Blake Burke, because he plays first base, does he not, for Clemson?
He was DH in first base for Clemson,
yeah. So I mean, just going on top of just the pure talent that Tennessee's getting. That's the thing that makes me especially excited for a guy that. I mean, my job requires me to be analytical about college basketball and college football, not really college baseball. SDS just doesn't really dive into that. But to still see the guys that Tennessee's coming in and still be able to be like, that seems really, really good. And then I confirm it. I'm like, yeah, that's really, really good. For Tennessee to just continuously be getting stuff like that, you got to be excited from a fan perspective. You got Tennessee, you got Danny White finally, I guess, getting the renovations through, and just the hype around Tennessee baseball should be at an all-time high right now. And we're forever away from the start of next season.
Cannot wait to drive down that road with all the battery adjacent and then LNS renovations. Like whatever is going on with the construction on that side of campus is going to be bonkers over the next
I was wondering what on
dorm over there too.
Just that entire, like, are they just going to get rid of that road in between? I don't even know what road that is, but are they just going to get rid of it? Because I don't see how else they'll be able to do it.
It didn't have it. That's kind of how I thought. But I mean, in this initial phase that they announced last week, it's still going to remain. But that didn't include all the stuff that they want to build, like battery style, and doesn't include the new dorm and the baseball training facility that's going to be in right field. So that's what I've long been saying, man. Just cut a road through the fraternity houses, cut that thing off, maybe extend the fences by a couple feet, and don't worry about that anymore.
There you go. Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at RockyTopInsider.com this week?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have plenty of stuff on whatever recruiting comes up for Tennessee
football. Did you say we'll have plenty of stuff on whatever? Come on, you've been doing this for a long time.
Whatever recruiting.
What is that?
I didn't put those words together particularly fluid, but whatever recruiting news breaks.
I don't know. Ryan's doing shit over at Rocky Top Insider. I don't know. He's doing stuff.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, and we'll have tons of MLB draft stuff, preview to that, and then tons of coverage on that and the fallout. But then again, I also just didn't know what day it was and said that the MLB draft's a week away when it's 4 days away. So obviously it's July. We sleep in July. So maybe I'm slacking a little bit, but there will be tons of content at RockyTopInsider.com. Tennessee football, basketball stuff. I think we're going to have some availabilities in the next couple weeks before they head on their Europe trip. And then, as always, Tennessee baseball offseason, we'll have everything you need. RTI transfer portal tracker, any commitment news, and then gearing up for the MLB draft.
There you go. Ethan, what about you and the team over at SaturdayDownSouth.com? Could you do a 1 through the last 50 articles that have been posted today?
Yeah, every 1 through 50, every single one of them, except for maybe one, has been about a recruit dropping a top 5, top 4, or committing to a certain place. And that's what it's going to be. SDS, Tradition, all of our sites. That's what it's going to be for the next probably month, couple months. Getting into talking season, so that's a lot of fun. Time to chill, like Ryan said, but a lot of recruiting coverage over at SDS, all 4 of our sites.
There you go. Ryan Schumpert, Ethan Stone, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to y'all next week.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.